Though I'm recording this without hatred, it's probably just inappropriate for many of you if you heard the peace greeting at the beginning of this one. To all you game champions, including you, Clarence, and this is a response to your vid. I've had my pen out when Edward's done his talking, when BGS has done his talking. I've had my pen out since before I even knew these guys, before I knew they existed. Remember, when I come down hard on game and any other aspect of nigger culture, it's because I've lived away. And I don't live around the most functional people on the planet. The Arabs are not stellar examples of efficiency, or even of Islam for that matter. And they'll tell you this. They're not even stellar examples of Arabic as a language. Their slang is jack the uck fuck, but everybody's got it. I understand that. I mean, in terms of intellect and intellectual development and academia and these things, it doesn't matter what the prior Muslims of the Islamic Empire's age used to be centuries ago. These guys here have a very Bedouin backwards mentality. And I can honestly say that there are certain ways in which they've got us beat now. For the most part, there are two things that do make them somewhat superior. Only two ways. They're not superior in general, but there are two things about them that are somewhat superior. One, the Gulf Arabs tend to have more wealth. And the reason they've got more wealth is, well, as we know, it's the oil. That's one thing. So the countries are, generally speaking, developed. And the other thing, too, is this. Their women are not as dysgenic as Western women are. They're not yet to the point where they're only seeking out the most stereotypical, swaggering, knuckle-dragging jungle bunnies they can find and saying you're the only one that's qualified to get some trim and have your own kids. They're not doing that. They're not saying that. It's not their mindset. Amongst black folks in the West, that's the only one. Amongst black folks in the West, we already know the guys that get to have their own kids are pretty much a very small minority of black men. And they're not even fully called on all the time to do all the raising. I mean, they don't wiggle out of child support court if she wants to take them there. But what does happen is this, and we already know. Some other guys look to fill in the gap. One of the reasons why sisters don't like being with, or they don't like to actually have, biologically speaking, productive black men's or responsible black men's babies is because they know those men are going to try to stick around. And they want the babies to themselves, but still want the check from the father. We know this now. How dare you tell us to learn something as nebulous as game in order to attract them? I know you're going to say they're not all like that. We know that they're not all like that. Most of them are. Yes, most of them. And the sad thing is that the ones who are not, we don't really know if it's most of them or not, because the ones who are not this way spend so much time indoors, we don't know they're there. They cannot get out and compete with the hyena bitch. It's not possible. The hyena broad is outdoors. You can meet her. Hell, if her life is upped up enough, she'll come and pursue you. And you're going to say, well, you know, a lot of times y'all don't even like those women because you still want you want the drama queens. No, what we're looking for is women to be able to look nice. That's all. And still know how to act. That's really what we're looking for. Some young guys do become convinced subconsciously that the two don't go together. But that's because they don't go together. And that's because the Western woman is running a racket, and Western black women lead. They're at the forefront of this. They may not have learned it first, they may not have started it, but they lead. They're in the forefront of this, and they're proudly so. They have their minds made up. There is no way I'm going to look nice and know how to behave. You ask them, they'll tell you these N words don't deserve it. Clarence and all you game coaches, we actually agree on the substance. When you start defining game as something that's substance, and you start, the way that Clarence defined it, these are things that we would agree that men should have and women should have. Women are the ones not bringing these things to the table. We black men are not walking around unconfident. We're walking around not expecting black women to hold us in high esteem because they've shown traditionally that they're not going to do that. Knowing that someone else doesn't esteem you or rate you is different from low rating yourself. Black women never, even before we were women and men, when we were still kids, they never had me convinced that I was some low quality male. They had me convinced that they saw me as a low quality male. I know myself, my strengths and my weaknesses. I know my friends, where I'm normal compared to them. Women could not come along, or little girls could not come along and convince me that I was inferior to these other guys. They were able to convince me that they saw me as inferior. Oh, that worked. I simply did not entertain many expectations of them viewing me differently. Knowing how someone views you and it's negative is not low self-confidence and low self-esteem. That's BS. We need to get rid of that notion. Y'all are always out here trying to correct guys. I mean, like, just always you're out here trying to correct men for having low confidence and low self-esteem when we're simply saying, okay, we know how these sisters see us. And these sisters, I mean, studies are showing that women in general view most men low. What's different is that in traditional areas, an individual woman does not have an agreement with all the rest of the hive mind to view most men the same way, so that the same 85% all get shut out of all mating opportunities until they agree to be stepdads or sugar daddies. And the same 15% get to do all the breeding. That's what is unique to the West. Now, Clarence, you are unique in that you define game as these things of substance that we would agree that men should have, but women also should have. We'd still disagree on the label and the beneficiaries. See, we also like self-improvement in general in the black manosphere. But that's in general. Believe me, I had to self-improve many times to avoid homelessness before I left the United States, and that need never stopped. It never even slowed down. As soon as I gained a skill, it was not needed anymore. Or it was only needed, but in exchange for very little. It all of a sudden would become less rewarding. If you want to talk about self-improvement, how's this for self-improvement? And for someone that you singled out for not believing in self-improvement when that's not what I said. I started off in middle school learning Spanish because I saw that it would be useful, and I realized it wasn't that difficult. I did as much as I could to learn Spanish along the Gulf Coast. I wasn't living in Texas. I was living along the Gulf Coast, 80s and 90s, doing the best I could to learn Spanish. A lot of classes weren't offered. Then after that, when I got to college, about second year, I started learning Amharic. Then after that, and I learned about a third of Amharic. Can't read it though. Then after that, I started to learn, for years I used Amharic sometimes in the Atlanta area. And Amharic is not related to English or Spanish. Then I came here. And I was in my late 30s when I got here, and I started learning Arabic. And that was really hard because most Arabs are not smart enough to explain their own language to anybody. Most people are not teachers of the language that they speak first. Most are not teachers, but Arabs are they don't think about much at all in depth. Arabs don't like to think in depth, to be honest with you. The best doctors and engineers in the States, it do include a lot of Arabs, but you go to the Arab world and you find that the average one walking around, they're nice, but they don't like thinking in depth enough to do anything of substance. No joke. And in the Gulf, it's really bad. I've been here amongst English teachers who have years of experience over me. A decade of experience beyond me. I've been here amongst them, and many of them don't even think that there's a way that you can make English easy for an Arabic speaker. Within 3 years of being here, I specialized in that. Making English easy for Arabic speakers. My students will tell you this. If a student of mine can speak any English at all, and you ask them about Black Mind, they will tell you. Some of them know me as Bald Monster. And they will tell you, oh yes, Bald Monster or Black Mind explains English well. It becomes easier. They'll tell you this if they know me. And this is within 3 years of being here amongst teachers from the English speaking world who had been here a decade or more by that time, had 10 years of experience over me, sitting up saying you can't do that. None of them had bothered to specialize in this. The new ones, I don't blame. The old ones, after decades, after 13 and 15 plus years of living here in the Gulf, how did they never come to specialize in that? You think I can do this and I don't believe in self-improvement? Right now, if I hadn't been screwed over by my former project manager, I'd be about maybe 5 salaries, 5 months ahead, roughly. My business that I started in the third country would be in its 2nd month of operation by now, beginning to turn over a small profit. Instead of me having to ask my subscribers for $3.60 per subscriber. By the way, Cash App's good for that, but you need to specify if you send it $3.60 for the business, or you can go to Odyssey. You can send anything there. If whatever sent in Odyssey, I assume is supposed to go to the business. But I wouldn't even have to reach out like that if a project manager hadn't screwed me over. But I was here 8 years before one of them did this. In the United States, it was always self-improvement. It was always you're not good enough. No matter what skill I learned, it was never good enough. Project managers routinely did me wrong there. It's who the cuss word they are. One of the reasons I can't stand Western white folks right now to this day is because they gaslight. I've had some defend me and keep me away from the foolishness. And they've been old cats too. Then I've had some of the younger ones turn around and they're like, we're going to put this N word where nobody can perform well, then we're going to blame them for it. You know who else has done that? Black women. I've had black women defend me. They were in more traditional parts of the country. In Atlanta, that stopped in 2005. By the time I was student teaching and about to become a substitute teacher, by the time that happened, they weren't looking out for me anymore. I had to go back to my hometown. Later on, well after 2010, I was back in my hometown teaching for a semester, and there were some sisters that did look out for me. They were old-fashioned. And then that stopped. Look, these things don't happen when you don't believe in self-improvement. And if I was really as bad as what I may look to you, I wouldn't give any sisters credit for the times that they did form a fence around us brothers at some job sites against Massa. And even against Massa's bitch. I don't see them as being competition for sisters. Not at all. But the thing is that what I dealt with a few months ago, for the first time in the 8.5 years I had been here at that point, I dealt with routinely and regularly in the American job market. And I believe in self-improvement. I ain't lazy. Ain't nobody ever said that about black mind at any job site. Man, that dude late. Nope, nobody would say that. No one said that about black mind ever. What I'm telling you about me is what applies to us in the black manosphere. We, sir, have not been sitting around here collectively disbelieving in self-improvement. But see, game has a verb that comes before it. You know, in English, game is a noun. And since there's this verb that always comes before the noun game, and you know that verbs are necessary in most English sentences for them to be sentences, you know what that verb is. We all do. Now you take that verb and put it before the noun game in a sentence, and this is exactly what Western women of all races rightly tell us all the time that they want guys to not do on every single dating profile, on every single dating app that they ever write. They themselves diss the concept of game by that name, especially when it works for guys, even if it doesn't work against the women. They only talk about and demand game so that it works against us. And you might be positive in your definition of game and you don't mean any harm. I get that. That's what I noticed about you specifically, Clarence, even distinguishing you from other game champions and game defenders. What you don't understand is that ain't how the women's define it. Unless, of course, it's something that can work against the man. Well, these things you mentioned, comfort in your own skin, comfort in yourself, self-knowledge, these things still demand a lot of self-introspection. And women will take a man that is in tune with himself and then say he is selfish. It's always that. You can't get around the fact that they're using this to duck and dodge. What they do, the way they see game is nebulous, and it's so by design. That's what you got to remember. So why should we learn something that nebulous if they don't want us to do the verb that goes along with it? Play the game. Now see, this is why we agree on the substance of self-improvement and we disagree on calling it game out of the gate. For them to demand anything and call it game when they themselves disgame by that very same name is hypocrisy. Let me do something that a woman does not understand and she asks me why, and I tell her I'm learning game, she will laugh or diss me or both. My excellent, great wife would be my ex-wife the next day if I said I'm learning game and she understood the context in which I meant it. We're not sitting here refusing to self-improve, Clarence. We're refusing to play game or play any games to trick straight women into justifying to themselves liking us already and giving us a chance. Because they got to justify this to themselves when they like us. You and I agreed on what to do when they ain't feeling us. Move on. We agree on that. What about when they feeling you but they need a justification? F that. We're not willing to try to convince them to justify to themselves giving us a chance if they already like us. And we are refusing to even so much as self-improve for their benefit. Why? Because Western women are nebulous, they're flighty, they're childish, they're whimsical. We're supposed to be solid and centered all the damn time. Okay, fine. In exchange for a flighty, uncentered, whimsical broad? An overgrown 12-year-old with tits? No, bruh, never mind. Austin already addressed that, actually, and we agree with him because of how he explained it. What will a Western woman do, especially a Western black woman, but a Western woman in general, do to match what you become after you self-improve? You self-improve, I self-improve, he self-improves, and by the time we're done, she's older, fatter, has kids by other men, and higher body counts than when we got started with the self-improvement. They come along and act like you qualify now because you self-improved. No, you qualify now because she's gotten worse. She just does. She knows the game. That's game right there. She knows that and doesn't tell you that and hopes you never figured it out because she done sat in a hair salon with all the other hyenas and they came to an agreement. Don't tell these niggas this. And they're on code with that. And the ones who don't have all of these negative things about them are still eliminating most men simply because they can. So they're profiting and benefiting to a certain extent from the fact that most of them are just low quality hyenas. And remember what I just said about them sitting in the hair salons and any other female only space and maintaining this racket and this conspiracy. Well, the few that admit it, they get outcast and are always insulted and called pygmies. Kendra D, Shay Sade, Chantel Simone, Dee Dee, and Celebrity Podcast, also known as Daphne Ford Sutton, have not only told us what the games are, but they've had women on their shows and channels telling us the games too. I mean, I know already because my own mom's gotten better at explaining the games, but by the time she developed the vocabulary to do it, I knew what the games were. So I give my mom an A for effort. But even Nyla, who ran the channel Red Film Diaries, confessed to some nasty and very insulting games and even instincts women have against men who do exactly what they want us to do out the gate. And in all honesty, if Nyla had not shown her face, I would have thought that she was faking illness so that she could disappear as a cancer victim and then go and live her normal life after she put the message out. I would have thought so, but she showed her face and people came along and said, you know what? No, she really did pass away later on. But if she was not a cancer victim, I would have said the smart thing for her to do was not show her face, go on ahead, and then when she survives it, get someone to go on and say, yeah, she passed away, bye. Say goodbye to her. And then she could go and live a normal life. I would have, I would have thought that that's what she would do. Why? Because of this, the danger to women that come out and say these things. You take women that are decent, they are out there, but they still eliminate almost every man for any and every reason they can because they're spoiled for choice. They ain't competing with the bad women, and they know they don't have much competition, so even they get ruined. And if we all just learned the game or self-improved or we did both, they'd still eliminate 85% of us. What's different is that in the West, all of them will eliminate the same 85% or more, and all of them will only approve of and screw the same 15% or fewer. I think it's down to 7. Western women are simply not worth the effort, and the Western black woman is the most honest about it. They even make you regret the effort. You get with most of them for a long enough time, and they will make you wish you would become a no-good stereotype instead of productive. I can tell you, dealing with Western black women, the worst thing I ever did was not be a homosexual. And that brings me to your next point. Productivity is necessary too. We agree. But you said we're not producing anything. You asked multiple times, what are you producing? Well, okay, that depends on what skill set we have. I guess to you being a barber is not productive enough, so that rules Austin out. I'm an educator. I'm part of the reason that I'm part of the reason for most of the bilingual population in the Gulf states. I'm part of that reason. There were many that were bilingual by the time I got here, but I've helped others to become bilingual, put them on the path. Is that productive enough for you? I mean, if not, learn Arabic. And I can tell you, the Arabs are not very helpful in teaching you Arabic. Now, you're probably never going to come here, but somebody else will. A lot of people come here for business reasons, and they can start off in their own language or in English and then learn Arabic over time and become better at it, largely because they can meet people that are bilingual, and that's where folks like me come in. I don't know. Am I productive enough for you? I actually specialize, and I haven't met another teacher yet that specializes in actually making English easy for Arabic speakers. I've met teachers that have been here 20 years and they never developed that as a specialty. I did. Is that productive enough for you? Maybe it's not. But you tell me. However, there are other guys, a lot of other guys that are BMPTs, black male passport travelers, that have actually, this is the part that's funny, they actually have skills that are much more difficult than ours. They're in IT or they're going into IT. We got a lot of brothers that are going into IT right now so that they can become BMPTs of some sort. Passport Bros, SYSBM, IBMOR. And I'm going to speak on behalf of Passport Bros, not so they can fornicate, but I'm going to speak on behalf of them as far as their rights to have choices go. Choices that do not include Western women, white or black or any other. Done. So, I'd be lying if I told you that I agree with you and these guys aren't producing anything at all. Maybe you're thinking, building a country. Countries have already been built. Now the work is to contribute to them and to maintain some infrastructure somewhere, whether it's cities, states, provinces, or countries. What are they doing? Bruh, a lot of skilled labor here that is staffed by Westerners is disproportionately staffed by black Westerners. If BMPTs are so unproductive, then they wouldn't earn enough for plane tickets, let alone passports, international flight tickets, and they wouldn't be productive enough to have a skill to get the work visas that allow them to go into these other places. I mean, in that economy in which you now live and from which I narrowly escape, who's getting paid to be unproductive? You can barely get paid to be productive, sexually or financially paid. Who's getting paid to be unproductive? A few celebrities that we uphold collectively are the only ones paid to be unproductive and stupid. Bad baby. I don't know why. I have skills that any school district will tell you they need, animal blackmail whom they say they need, and yet I would never earn enough anywhere in the United States to live on my own, and most of us wouldn't. And once a place becomes affordable for me to live on my own, someone's going to come and gentrify it so I wouldn't be able to live there anymore. They got a nice racket, I must say. We're actually going to places and learning how not to financially blow up spots the way white Westerners do when they move somewhere. But two groups of people discussing that particular concern of not outpricing and gentrifying areas en masse, and we BMPTs are one of them. And I'm talking the same black men that you want to stay put in Baltimore and deal with Keisha and Coach Earth and raise her kids by other men. The others that are discussing that are the locals, the citizens that could get priced out over time. See, we're smarter than what you might think. We're smarter than even what white passport bros may want to admit or not. We're more beneficial than what you might think. We're just not allowed to be these things on behalf of our own children in the United States or the UK or the Bahamas or Jamaica or Barbados or Belize, because we're usually not even wanted to breed, but just to feed. You don't need us to help you take care of your kids, Clarence. Since you ain't one of them dudes that needs that, don't ask us to stay and take care of somebody else's. See, it is specifically because we are far enough from stereotypical to have any means at all that we are assumed to not have the genes and shut out of reproduction accordingly. But in order for us to have the means, we got to leave. We take our skills abroad, and the next thing we know, we are sought after, and in some places more than even Master Wyatt. All of a sudden, we got the genes and the means. Now, social skills are fine and even necessary. Skills to earn a living are fine and even necessary. Diplomacy is fine and even necessary. But we have these things, otherwise we wouldn't be able to live elsewhere. We tend to have more of these things than the whites. You see, in the West, we tend to have culture clashes between our stereotypes and the hand-picked from other areas of the world that were allowed to immigrate into the US or the UK or Canada. We go abroad, and now we are the skilled ones that are mingling with the masses of these nations from which the hand-picked immigrated into the United States and Canada and the UK, and that dynamic is very different. In the US, you have to deal with anti-blackness from Asians. They're hand-picked. I told you that. You got to deal with anti-blackness from Arabs. They're hand-picked. I told you that. I'm over here. I'm dealing with it, and I'm gonna tell you straight. I don't like white Arabs the way that I was okay with them before. To a certain extent, I now look at them with more of a side eye because I've learned more from one day a so-called white Arab, and the same day, a few hours later, I was learning more from Mr. Hausawi. And I'm one of those that'll tell you that the Arab who's racist is more corrigible than the white that's racist. I'm the one that'll tell you that. Still better than dealing with who you deal with over there. Yet and still, what we're dealing with here is a scenario in which we don't face job discrimination. Not yet. I'm about to find out. Well, no, I take that back. I was told that sometimes we do. However, that job discrimination also goes across tribal lines as well. In the States, we straight black men face more job discrimination than any other demographic across the board, according to more recent studies. We have every financial reason to leave the West. And then when we do leave, we are the ones that people actually befriend more so than others. Ask me how I know. So we already have what you mean when you use the term game, and we agree on the necessity of these concepts, these skills, and we refuse to be told to develop them as though we have none of them out of the gate already. We have them. We have to have them. But we damn sure refuse to develop them or the deceptive skills that the word game implies just for the purpose of convincing a heterosexual woman that already likes us visually that it's okay to try us out, even though we're not her enemy stereotypes of us, and she can't brag about us to her ratchet ass friends in the hair salon. They're on video confessing anyway that they want scammers and drug dealers, and the ones who don't confess to this still want that, and the ones who don't want that have to act in public like they do, because it's a shame for Western sisters to not want the swaggerific niggerilla stereotype. We can't coach that, sir. We're not stereotypical enough to have the authority to coach them on anything, and they listen, especially if it's something positive. They ain't gonna listen. And I'm gonna tell you this about being pro-black. I'm pro-black. I'm pro-black male first. I gotta be. I'm pro-black non-Western and non-Westernized female next, because I gotta be. I cannot include the Western or Westernized black woman in that. I cannot be pro her because she's against us. Think about it. You can talk all this black love and everything else, bruh. You take a black woman and you give her something that makes her attractive to white men, and she's an exception amongst black women, and she's gonna marry and tolerate stuff from that white dude. It's already, the secret is out. They're taking and accepting things from non-black men, especially white men. They don't tolerate from black men. You black, you gotta be ballin'. You not black, you just got to treat them right. You white, you can sleep on their couch indefinitely. You can have 1/10 their wealth. You're white, she could be waiting for marriage, and she'll go ahead and make you an exception, and then make sure she conceives before the marriage so that you have to get married. We all know who I'm talking about now. I ain't even got to say it. We've already seen, and that's part of why the one about whom I'm talking has a father that didn't show up for that wedding. I don't blame him. And I get it. Her husband, he's still a millionaire. He still owns, a platform. But the thing is this: I'm a light-skinned black man. If I owned a platform and my wife was insulted on that platform, I would have been scrutinized by sisters for what others said on my platform, and my wife would have left me for what others said on my platform. Hell, being a light-skinned black man with straight hair when I had hair, as a matter of fact, I was never going to be able to marry a Western sister unless she was ugly, fat, with another nigga's kids. Actually with other niggas' kids. And it has to be N19s too, the N-word. Can't be another black man's kids. Gotta be an N-word. He's gotta be the one he's not gonna say, hello, so how's everything going? We work together to parent and step parent. Not that kind of guy. No, it's gotta be straight up knuckle drag. What up, blood? Yeah, you looking kind of soft, man. You don't worry, my kids ain't never gonna call you daddy. Matter of fact, they ain't even gonna call you mister. Hey, Junior, call this nigga soft, man. Call this nigga moist. That kind of, they got to be the fathers. It's always that. That's what's waiting for me and a bunch of other dudes out there. Me on the basis of looks and the stereotype I'm not. Other brothers on the basis of just the stereotype they not. And you want us to stay put in the West? It ain't like I said, it ain't like you need any of us to help you take care of your kids. You there for them. You got that. What you need our help for? The pro's blackest thing to do right now is for us to look at Latin America, the continent, certain parts of it, just like certain parts of Latin America and Southeast Asia, and see which women like us the most. Keep in contact with each other and allow our kids to choose from each other's kids who's the best for them to marry. That's the pro's blackest thing for us to do. The worst thing we can do for our people is to stay put in the West, in the US, Canada, the UK, the Anglophone Americas in general, dealing with them ratchet sisters and giving them unlimited access to our wallets and our resources and our time, or our seed, because they ain't gonna take our seed anyway. You give them the option, they're not going to want our seed. They're going to want some irresponsible stereotype seed. Then they're going to want us to come along and pay. They tell you this. They don't even hide it. We tried, so we really did. But like I said, they're confessing. And if you don't want to ask the women whose names I already mentioned, then ask Atari, which he told Dennis Sperling. Ask Danielle, or Concrete Rose, I think is her name, which he told BGS already back in April of 2020. I would say ask Nyla too, but she passed away from a fight with cancer, as I mentioned. But you can ask Poor Man Podcast, which he told him. And she still left behind these confessions for her sons to listen to when she's gone, so they won't be taken advantage of by bad women in her absence. And that reminds me, I need to download her stuff and upload it to Odyssey so it never gets taken down. We'll not waste our efforts to attract, let alone keep or take care of for life, any of these lying snakes in the name of the community or blackness. There is a whole continent of black women, and some areas in it are still traditional and not obsessed with game by any definition that actually applies to the word game. And if that continent falls to feminism or thought culture, we will abandon it too. And if Afro-Latinas fall victim to feminism or thought culture, we'll abandon them too. And the pro's blackest thing to do will be to go to Southeast Asia and start raising Blasian families. Tell those sisters back on the continent and in Latin America to step it up, refuse to imitate Western sisters, and start showing the same interest in us that Southeast Asian women are currently showing, because they choosing hard. Afro-Latinas tend to be back and forth. Some of them are really choosing hard. Hats off to them. The question is not what we're choosing, sir. It never was. It's about who chose us and under what conditions. So again, damn game, and damn the N19 custom of nebulosity and mystifying hard necessities of life. Until the day that we rid our population of that bad habit, damn the N19s who continue that bad habit. Until the day that sisters value productivity and don't value anything that will be confused with something as nebulous and evasive as game, damn them too. Thanks for listening. As always, black heart, black mind, black out. I appreciate you flying again with us on Jet Black Airways, where jet black is also a verb. And keep jet black on me until the wings and the wheels fall off. Black, heterosexual, non-select male power Clarence, just because she doesn't like it. And black patriarchy until extinction or judgment day.